All right, so we're gonna proceed with the necessary steps to get these calipers off and put the new ones in, and what tools were needed. Some elements are gonna still have these little screws, little Phillips head screws, and these are just to hold the rotor in place while you work on it. Hate these. I hate them. They're tough sometimes to take off. When they are tough to take off, I usually just drill them out and we can replace them with some new ones. In this case, we'll see how they do. But you can either use the Phillips head impact remover, or this is what I do sometimes. I'll just grab one of these right on the head. I'll smack them. And what that does is it'll shock them. It'll shock them, and it might break down the rust. Look at that. Perfect. Or it'll loosen them up. See how they get a little rusty? That rust is what will keep them in place. There we go. So this is step one before anything. I would recommend just trying to figure this out first before you start taking anything else apart, because these can hold you back sometimes anywhere from a couple minutes to a couple hours, depending on your experience level. But yeah, step number one, take these off. For our application now, we aren't gonna need these no more. So you'll see as to why. Next step is to remove the caliper. There's two 17mm bolts back here. This one and this one. And you just go ahead and start removing those. Go back here. And usually, you're gonna need yourself a hook, a strap, a bungee of some sort, just to hold this up, because we are gonna need to take that brake line off in a bit. So this comes off. Sometimes they need to be smacked off. This one's actually not bad. So take this off the rotor. So if your rotors are difficult to take off, it's because there is rust behind the rotor, and it'll usually stick. So what you want to do is just, this one's not bad, so it doesn't require too much scuffing, but we'll just clean off the area. Like I said, this doesn't apply to every element. It's just those that have seen some rust. Get yourself a Scotch pad or even like a wire brush, just to knock off some of that rust. Okay, so now that we clean this, the next step would be these eyelets right here. These two sections. There's two ways to go about this. You can either bend this section back or chop it. Either way is fine. Personally, I like to cut them off. Bending is fine. I like to just cut them off, get them out of the way, and I'll just like spray a little bit of paint right here, back here. But for this application, we'll probably just bend it back. I'll show you how to do that right now. Just get yourself some pliers. You can just bend it back like that. Bend it like so. And this is very flimsy. Even with one hand, you can just do it. But yeah, you can just bend it back like that. And you can just bend this all the way back. You can just taco it on both sides. Just taco it like that. It gets out of your way. Next step, what I like doing is I just like loosening this first. The reason why I like loosening it first, because there's nothing in my way. I don't have to worry about hitting the brake caliper, the new one that we're gonna put in. So I'll loosen it and then just tighten it up. That way I know it's broken loose. So when I actually go to take it off, everything's nice and loose. I'm not struggling, fighting with anything. So I'll do that. Once we do that, we'll just clean this off just to make sure we're not leaking anything for now, just so we don't make a mess. And now we're gonna proceed with installing our caliper. And I'm gonna change my gloves because I don't want to dirty that one too much. So once we clean that off, make sure it doesn't leak, we'll proceed to the next step, which is installing the spacer, the rotor, and then the other spacer. So I'll show you that process right now. So now we will proceed with the next step, which is spacers. This spacer fits the hub. If you guys want more measurements, it is the 5 by 4.5, 5 millimeters thickness, 64.1 borehole size. So this is what we do. Put this in there.
And that one you didn't have to modify at all, right? It's just plug and play, or?
So there's multiple ones that you'll find. There's multiple ones that you'll find out there. There's some that have a small lip, like this one. There's some that have a bigger lip. There's some that are just flat. If you can find the ones without a lip, that's the one to get. If you can't, find the ones with the smallest size lip. That would be your two. The one with the bigger lip, you cannot use. Anything bigger than that, you cannot use. And the reason for that is because since this sits back here, the lip that it sits on is a small lip. So this falls right on there. If you were to have a bigger lip on there, then this rotor's not gonna fit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this on there, all the way back. And also, I forgot to mention, to tight fit, the screws that we took off earlier, we're not gonna utilize them anymore because this doesn't have them, which is fine, don't worry about it. So now we have the rotor, this rotor. Now we'll proceed with installing a spacer.
And that spacer comes with provided nuts, right?
Yeah, so you kind of want to use the nuts that it comes with. And they should be the same thread pitch. Should be the same thread pitches. So then these get torqued down to the same torque spec as when you have the wheel on. The inner ones and then also the outer ones once you put the wheel on.
Perfect.
So now we're going to proceed with cleaning the rotor. Let's see. The prep work that was done to this caliper before powder coating is the casting marks that were here, there was a raised casting mark here and here. What I ended up doing also here, I ended up sanding this entire area down, including this area, to fit 16-inch wheels. If you have 17s, 18s, anything bigger than a 17-inch wheel, you will have no issues. On a 16, from what I've learned, is that this is the best area to clean it, because the wheel sits so close to this area that those actual casting marks that it might have, they might rub against the wheel, just so future references. But since these came in bare, what I was able to do is just prep them, get them ready for powder coat. So just in case, anybody was curious whether they fit 16s, they do fit 16-inch wheels, but you do need to shave them down a little bit right here. Well, we're just gonna put a little bit of anti-seize on the bolts. Just a little bit of anti-seize just to help it. All right, so now we will proceed with the install. So the new bolt size is going to be a 19. Original is 17, this is a 19.
And it's pretty nice that you installed the
time inserts.
The inserts in the caliper and not at the spindle.
Yeah, the spindle, I don't like modifying the spindle in case something happens where you need to replace something. the spindle is one of those things that it's difficult to come across. This you want to just snug it, perfect. Yeah, I'd rather just replace a caliper than having to replace a caliper and a spindle. So now we're going to install our brake pads. Brake pads, these have a wear indicator. This wear indicator will let you know once your brakes start getting low, it'll squeak. So the wear indicator, I always like putting them on the inside of the caliper. So sometimes they depending on the company and the manufacturer or whatever, they will put it on whichever side they think is best. So it doesn't matter if it's here or here. On this brake pad, it's down here. So as long as it's on the inside, not on the outside of the caliper. So since this is a new caliper, I don't want to really stretch or damage the powder. So we'll do that. Tight fit because of the powder coat.
So just make sure that you hit it a few times because of the powder coat. You want to make sure the pin is all the way.
And this one, I put one in like that. Press this down.
There we go.
All right, so now that we installed the brake pads, next step that I like to do is I like masking these areas of the brake caliper. Reasons for that is if we get any residual fluid, brake fluid that comes out, it won't drip on the paint, on the powder coat, sorry. Brake fluid is very acidic, so it'll eat through any kind of paint, any kind of powder coat. So anything that we can do to protect that right now, it's always good. So I'll just mask these areas off real quick. Let's see. So I'll do masking tape first because it doesn't adhere so aggressively to the powder coat, and then I'll do duct tape. I'll just do duct tape as duct tape. I think it should be one of the last steps. We will remove this brake line, and we save it till last because we want to minimize as much of a mess as we can, and then we'll cover up the caliper as much as we can as well. We had already loosened this up, so this is easy to take off. So see, it's dripping. We just put a drain pan underneath. Take out these old crush washers and replace them with some new ones. Just take this plastic cover off. When you do this setup, make sure you go with brand new banjo bolts for the brake lines. Get the ones for these calipers, which is a 2007-2008 Acura TL Type S. They are slightly different in length and the nose shape as well. So plus they're going to be brand new. Everything's going to be new. Banjo bolt, washer, line, washer. And this you want to do it by hand. You don't need to get brake lines unless you need to replace them, but it's not mandatory for you to, I mean, if you want to upgrade, you can. So when you go to put the line back on, obviously you want to let it fall into its natural position, and this is always good to just have it following a nice path. There's a wrong way to do this, but you'll know. If it's fighting you, you know it's in the wrong position. And you don't want to use anything crazy, just a box end wrench like this. So what you want to utilize to tighten this down. You don't want to over torque this because then you'll strip the bolts. Take this out. So now that everything's installed, we're going to proceed with bleeding the brakes. Just one more thing to double check. Just when you install everything, if somebody's helping you, great. Have them pump the brakes to build up pressure within the system, and then just double check back here to see if there's any residue or any brake fluid leakage. So we're good on both sides. So now we can proceed with bleeding the brakes.
Honda recommends to start bleeding the brakes from the front driver's side and then work your way all the way towards the father's wheel in the Honda Element.
Yeah. There's multiple ways to bleed the brakes, but Honda recommends start at the closest wheel, then the passenger front, passenger rear, and then driver rear, and then passenger rear last.
Just to remind you guys that when you're bleeding the caliper, it has two bleeding screws, one here in the front and another one in the rear. So make sure that you bleed both. If not, you're gonna have troubles with the brake pedal feeling all loose.
Quick recap. OEM banjo bolts. You're not always going to run into this issue like we did today. Kind of recommend it now just so you can avoid any issues when you do this, because it was a 3-hour job. Took us 5 hours to figure all this crap out. It is what it is. We learned that banjo bolts aren't the easiest things to come across on a Sunday. So yeah, I mean, it's all there. It's not leaking no more like it was. And just one more thing too. You're gonna have to get your wheels rebalanced if the wheel weights are on the inside of the wheel. If your weights are on the inside or towards the face of the wheel, you're gonna have to get it rebalanced. This only applies to 16-inch wheels. If you're running 17s, you should be clear. If you're running 18s or 19s, you're 100% clear. The only reason why we had to rebalance the wheels, put the wheel weights on the inside on the 16-inch rim, was because we would hit. So this is the clearance that we have. Super tight fit. It looks good though. It looks really good. So yeah, she's pretty much done for today. What
And we end up using the spacers 3/4 of an inch in the front,
Yeah.
right?
So minimum 3/4 inch spacers for most wheels. MST wheels, I know some of you guys run MST wheels. I've already done the testing. 3.5 inch spacers with MST wheels, you will just barely clear. If you want to be on the safer side, 1 inch spacer with the MST wheels. Here we have 3/4 inch spacers and they clear just nicely.
And how about in the rear, just to kind of compensate the look now, right?
Yeah, just to compensate the look. The rear, you're always gonna have to run wider spacers on the back than the front. So if we're running 3/4 in the front, inch in the back, or inch and a quarter, inch and a half.
What do we have right now? 1.5 inches?
We have inch and a quarter.
1.25 inches. Okay, good to know.
So yeah, just to compensate the look a little bit, because we had to widen this front end a little bit. But yeah, pretty straightforward install, minus what we ran into today, but it's okay. It happens for a reason. That way we can inform you guys. That way you guys don't have to run into these issues. So yeah, she's all there. Look at her. Now we just gotta powder coat those wheels.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah, next is gonna be a lot of upgrades coming up, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the powder coat wheels. We're gonna show kind of like a walkthrough of what is involved and what Joseph does in the shop.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna do the 1320 performance exhaust,
Catback exhaust.
cutback exhaust, and more modifications coming. So keep tuned to the channel. Joseph, thanks so much again for your expertise when it comes to element.
No, thank you for your expertise, man. I can't do this alone. So
We both work together as a team, and the point for these videos is to share to other element owners the most informations that we can. So
yeah,
It's-
and we want to be open as possible with our issues that we run into, all the little problems, because there's never a perfect day, right? We're always going to run into certain issues, and I am really glad this happened to us and not to anybody else. because at least we can at least figure out a solution. We can figure out ways to get around the problem, and now we can inform you guys correctly with a good solution. So thank you, Miguel, for all your expertise as well, because alone, I don't know. I don't think I'd be able to do this alone. So
Thank you, Joseph, and see you next Honda Element video.
on that element video.
Sounds good. Thank you, bro.